John Graham, shipped out on a freighter when he was 16, took part in the first ascent of Mount McKinley's North Wall at 20, and hitchhiked around the world at 22. A Foreign Service officer for 15 years, he served in Libya during the Revolution and in the war in Vietnam. At the United Nations in the late 1970s, he was deeply involved in the U.S. initiatives in Southern Africa, South Asia, and Cuba. When he left the Foreign Service, he took a job lecturing on cruise ships. On his first cruise with 550 people aboard, the ship burned and sank in the Gulf of Alaska. His lifeboat lost in a violent storm, Graham was finally pulled to safety and to a new sense of purpose for his life. Today, his speeches, workshops, and books, all part of the nonprofit Giraffe Heroes Project, have helped thousands of people solve tough problems in their communities and beyond.
We had 3 or 4 more hours to live, but in reality we had half an hour, because if we weren't found in half an hour, there would just be our corpses left in the lifeboat if we weren't thrown out in the storm. So we had half an hour. And that's a long, long time to think about dying. I wasn't a particularly religious person, but let me tell you, you're stuck in a situation like that, you're sure your luck has run out, you think about praying. I didn't really know how to pray. But I just started talking, and I remember obviously very clearly what went on. And my prayer quickly turned into a complaint. I didn't have a lot of faith. And the complaint went something like this. Look, God, I've left the Foreign Service. I'm no longer doing wars and revolutions and arms sales. I have a lot of wonderful ideals to help make the world a better place. And I'm just starting out to do that. And now I'm being wiped out. It doesn't make any sense. I thought that the world was a logical place. I mean, I went to a Jesuit high school. I know about order in the universe. I said, why am I being wiped out now just as I'm starting to do your work? It doesn't make any sense. And I got angrier and angrier. And I remember turning my face into the teeth of this storm and just screaming, why? I don't know what the other 7 guys heard in that lifeboat. But for me, the reply, and there was a reply, was just like in the Bible in the burning bush. And the reply in so many words is, stop kidding me. Here you are, you've left this career to make the world a better place. You loved it when your friends patted you on the head in New York City about all your wonderful ideals. Then you started a consulting business and it didn't work. And now you're on a cruise ship. If you get out of this, you'll go on another cruise ship. What I see is you running away from your ideals. And if that's the case, you might as well die out here. It's going to happen very quickly. Because the next 50 years aren't going to be worth living. You got a choice to make. That's what I heard. I was beaten. I had no reserves left. I was freezing. I was seasick as a dog. And I just looked up and said, okay. Okay. And I know this sounds like the end of another grade B movie, but in that instant, an instant of submission, this Coast Guard cutter comes crashing through this wild storm. It would have cut us in two had the lookout not seen us. And we got rescued. Back at the United Nations, again I said I was working on South African affairs. Well, on one of my trips to South Africa, I spent a day in Johannesburg. Or rather, I spent the morning in Soweto, which is the black ghetto, or was the black ghetto of Johannesburg. Walked down the streets of Soweto, garbage strewn, sense of hopelessness. You could feel the hate of a whole bunch of black eyes boring into the back of my white head. And that evening, since I'm still a serving diplomat, I get invited to a cocktail party in a posh mansion in the white section of Johannesburg. A mansion protected by wrought iron fences and guard dogs. Apartheid stank. When I came back to New York, I resolved I would finally do something about it. And I knew that one of the reasons apartheid continued to exist was that even though there was a UN embargo against selling guns to the South African Army and police, that embargo was a joke. It was a joke because there was so much money to be made in shipping guns. So everybody was doing it. Our country, the Europeans, everybody was doing it. And I says, that's where to attack apartheid. We'll create an arms embargo that will really be tough, but I can't do it with my own government. Quite frankly, there was too much pressure in Congress. Not even President Carter was able to do it. So what I did was start playing a double game. I started meeting privately, and I mean privately, with other members of the Security Council from the Third World, trying to show them what the pressure points were on my own government. Once I saw an angry message to Secretary of State Vance about apartheid and America's refusal to toughen the arms embargo, and I recognized in the middle of that message were 2 paragraphs that I myself had drafted a week before. Yeah, it was a dangerous game. I would have been fired had I been found out. But at a certain point, when these messages were really flowing, I went to my own people and said, look, this pressure is enormous. We have to do something. We can't let Carter's promises just lie there. And finally it worked. America agreed to a tough arms embargo on the South African military and police. The Europeans went along. And in May of 1980, the embargo was put in place. And that embargo helped end apartheid. I couldn't forget that. I couldn't forget my role in that. I couldn't forget why I'd done it. The motivation for me was so strong, there was no way I could not have done what I did. There was no way I could not have taken those risks. And it was like learning to swim. I couldn't forget what I'd done, nor could I forget how I'd done it. Most importantly, I had found the meaning for my life, and I had found it in service. My wife Ann says quite accurately that I'm a slow learner. For those of us that are slow learners, we take a strong kick in the head, like that lifeboat experience, to finally get it, that you can't ignore the search for meaning in your life. For everybody else, I think, just about everybody else, it's a lot easier. There are still small voices out there. There are all kinds of things out there to remind you what your life is about. Find them. Whatever it is for you, ask what you care about. Lift up the corner of the rug that you can lift up and act. Do it to make life better for other people. Do it to solve a problem, but do it for you. Act with meaning. Lead with meaning. To provide passion and energy and focus in your own life. I went back for a high school reunion not too long ago. And there was a guy there who was the slow guy. His name was Tom Noble. He was not voted the most likely to succeed. And Tom told me that for the last 30 years, he'd been running a drug rehab clinic in the worst section of Tacoma, Washington. And he'd just gotten his name in the papers for risking this big methadone treatment problem that got everybody up in arms, that he was going to do it. And he talked about his work with drug addicts. And he talked with passion. He talked with energy and excitement. Tom had found the meaning for his life, and he was going for it with everything that he had. Where's the focus of your leadership? Where is your service? Let it be your answer to Mary Oliver's question. Tell me, what do you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?